Everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the 2015 Retina MacBook Pro and see how this particular MacBook holds up in 2024. Now, the thing I will definitely tell you about these particular MacBooks is that in a lot of different ways, they were very, very interesting. So these were the last MacBooks, I would say, for a long period of time where Apple sold, where a lot of people were swearing that these were the best ones they had ever made at that moment. This was the last one of their kind of like standard MacBook Pros that you'd kind of think of as an older type of MacBook. This was before they brought the touch bars and the USB Type-C and all those types of things. And this was that MacBook, which is pretty crazy. Now, I personally owned this MacBook for a couple of years. I went from a 2014 to a 2015 MacBook Pro, and I kept it until I switched over to my M1 MacBook Pro from like 2021. So for a couple of years, I was using my 2015 15-inch MacBook Pro, but the 13-inch was one that I used as well, and I loved this MacBook a lot. Now, if you want to pick up some MacBooks, this year, I probably wouldn't recommend buying this one. There are some other ones I'd recommend buying, so I will leave some link down in the description. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the outside and the design of the 2015 Retina MacBook Pro, the design of this MacBook was basically the same thing stemming off of the 2012, Retina MacBook Pro. These things looked very good. I really didn't have too many issues with the design or anything like that with this particular MacBook. I still think it looks very, very good for the most part, and I really don't have that much to complain about here from a design perspective. Now, you are getting the glowing Apple logo at the very top, which I believe this is one of the last MacBooks to have that glowing Apple logo, which is another pretty crazy thing going on for this particular MacBook. It was a very good premium feeling Mac as well. You had that standard type of styling at the top, which is very cool. The size of this MacBook felt very, very good as well, and it still feels like a very expensive MacBook, which is still very cool. Now, you are getting those standard ports on this particular device as well. So this, again, was one of the last MacBooks to have all these ports that I'm basically going to state right now. So with this MacBook, you are getting the MagSafe 2 charging cord, or the charging port, which is great because you could easily just plug this thing in and it could charge from this MacBook, which is really cool. 2 Thunderbolt 2 ports. So these things were standard Thunderbolt 2. You could dock a Thunderbolt monitor to these things. You could dock this thing to a display. Typically what I would do is I just had this thing plugged into an HDMI monitor, and I just bought a Thunderbolt 2 to HDMI port or cord, adapter, whatever, and I was able to plug those things in, and it worked out pretty well. You were getting 2 of them here. You were getting one USB 3 port on this side, so you can plug in, devices and stuff via, USB 3, which is cool. Then you were getting a headphone jack. Very good ports on that side, not much to complain about there. On the other side, though, this is where things also get very interesting. So this one, you were getting an SD card slot on this particular MacBook, which was amazing. Having an SD card was super cool, and that is something that I look at and I'm so extremely happy about because that was a very cool thing going on for this particular device. You were getting an HDMI port on this particular MacBook as well, and then you were getting another USB port. Now, the things that I loved the most about this particular MacBook was 2 things. Number one, the SD card slot, the HDMI port, and even that MagSafe, port for the most part as well. This is why so many people stated that this MacBook was probably one of the best MacBooks they ever made for a couple of generations, and that was because of these particular ports. It was a very cool thing that they did, and I actually love this MacBook a lot because I didn't have to carry an adapter around or a dongle around or anything like that. I could just use this thing as I normally would, and I had a very, very good time with this particular MacBook at that moment. So from the port side of things, this particular MacBook definitely got a thumbs up for me, and I love this MacBook a lot because of those particular ports. Now, the bottom of this MacBook didn't really have anything going on. It was just that standard type of styling, where you can kind of unscrew these things and kind of take out the bottom. So overall, when I look at this particular device, I think it looks very good. I love the way this particular MacBook holds up on the outside. I think it looks very, very nice. It definitely looks a little bit dated though, as you probably suspect. It is an older type of machine, but I think this thing still looks very good for the most part, and I love this thing a lot because of it. Now, flipping this thing open, at the very bottom, you were getting that keyboard. Now, some things with this keyboard, one, it was a full-size keyboard, which was really nice. You could really just go through and just, type on this keyboard and do really whatever else you wanted to do with it. And it was a very nice keyboard at that. It was a very, very cool thing that Apple kind of had here, which I was very happy about. Now, there was no touch bar, nothing like that, but it was a full-size keyboard, full travel, and that was something I really, really appreciated about this particular device. Now, yeah, we're getting that, multi-touch trackpad at the very bottom too, and this was an interesting MacBook trackpad because this was the first time that they actually added a vibration motor in the trackpad. So this was kind of like a force touch kind of trackpad. It was a vibration motor. So it was not actually clicking into place, which I actually liked a lot. That was a very cool thing going on for this particular Mac, and they've added to every single MacBook since then. So that was another cool thing going on here. On the top side though, this is where you were getting the display. Now, these MacBooks came out in two different sizes, a 13-inch Mac or a 15-inch Mac. I had both models. I had both a 13-inch 2015 MacBook and a 15-inch 2015 MacBook. I liked both of them. The only issue I had was, between both, they both had the same issue, which was the fans would kick on all the time. But it wasn't that big of a deal. That was the only thing I even really would complain about. But this display of this thing looked very, very good. These Retina displays, Apple knocked it out of the park. Even currently, they're still very, very good displays. But when I look at this particular MacBook, I'm very happy with the way Apple went ahead and approached this particular MacBook at that time. And I still think they hold up very, very well from that particular perspective. So on the exterior, the design of this MacBook, I love a lot. I think it's held up very well since, the last 9 years. It's crazy to think that next year, this thing will be 10 years old, which is actually crazy. But not everything is perfect about this MacBook. You kind of heard me state earlier about how these fans would kick on all the time. That was kind of an annoying thing that was going on here. If I was going through and recording audio, I would have to cool down my MacBook or close out of some things if I was going to record audio in the background. That was kind of like a minor thing that would sometimes annoy me. Again, not the biggest deal in the world, but that was one thing that was kind of shocking to me at the time. On top of that, with this particular device, you were still getting overall a little bit of a different type of experience compared to MacBooks nowadays. So I would say a lot of devices nowadays probably would require USB-C. They would require a newer version of a device, like a newer version of a MacBook. And there's been so much progression since this MacBook came out. So you have to think about things like the M chipsets. That has completely changed a lot of stuff that you probably think about, because this is an Intel-based MacBook. Having those newer Apple Silicon chipsets are much better MacBooks and much better devices now that, Apple's kind of made them. On top of that, you're now talking about, a almost 10-year-old MacBook. Definitely this thing is not going to be getting the latest greatest software and the latest greatest features. This thing has been outdated with software for a little bit of time now, which is not the biggest deal in the world, but that can be kind of a little bit of an annoying thing if you wanted to get a MacBook that still had some features ahead of it. And although the performance is kind of okay and some other things are okay here and there, this MacBook is a little bit harder to kind of recommend to people, considering that it's a little bit outdated with software. So that is a little bit sad, I would say, with this particular device, because with the 2015 Retina MacBook Pro, you're going to be, I think, on Mac OS High Sierra or whatever version of Mac OS that is. It's a little bit outdated, as you probably would guess. And at that point, you might as well go and upgrade to a different type of MacBook and get one that is still supported with software. So at the end of the day, what I will definitely tell you is that hardware-wise, the 2015 MacBook Pro was actually very, very interesting. I think Apple did a really good job with this MacBook, and it was kind of like the last hurrah for the Mac lineup for so many years. So many years after this MacBook came out, this was the one that most people went back and got, because this one had the most amount of it. This one was the most stable one with way less features, way less faulty things. This is the one people ended up getting. So I will tell you, the 2015 Retina MacBook Pro in that regard is pretty good, but I probably wouldn't recommend buying this MacBook anymore. I genuinely don't think it's worth buying. I think you're much better off purchasing a MacBook that is still supported. Just go to the M1 MacBook Air or the M1 MacBook Pro, and those are probably going to be the best ones I'd recommend the average person to buy. So that pretty much covers it up here. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that will mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.